We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders. We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders. We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Yep. So you heard him. Let us start by saying Barak Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushai, by Hashem Rakah Kodash. The name of this one is America, the Voice of the NWO. Because through America is where they got the, excuse me, the, how can I say it? The word, I guess, or the go-ahead to push forward the so-called New World Order. You know, and this so-called New World Order is important to these devils because this is the vision that they're trying to bring upon the world, you know. And this so-called New World Order is in the scriptures. You know, this is something that the scriptures speak about. Let's read real quick the book of Revelation 17. And let's see, 17:16. And the 10 horns which represent the EU, the European Union, which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore be in America. The beast is NATO. The 10 horns is the EU. The whore is America. All right, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire, because they're going to shoot their missiles at this place for the final judgment. It says, for the Most High hath put in their hearts, see, the Most High has put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, unto the words of the Most High shall be fulfilled. So this new world order is the will of the Lord for these so-called elite to do and push forward, so that the Lord can bring forth the fulfillment of his words. It says, and the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. And then when you read the 18th chapter, it goes into that city, which is America, and it tells you all the particulars of what's going to happen to this whole, and how she lived deliciously, and how she had the trade, you know, of the world on lock, so on and so forth. It's no coincidence that America is known as she had here the World Trade Center, you know, which is the commerce of the world, trading all their goods here in America, you know, through this bitch or this whore. So what I want to do is I want to go to Daniel 7:2, and says, Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. So these 4 beasts represent 4 empires that would rule from that time period till now to usher in the end, of the age, or the end of the kingdoms of the heathens. So let's jump to the 7th verse. And the 7th verse says, after this I saw in the night vision. So we went, you have the first beast, you have the second beast, and the third beast. I just want to deal with the fourth beast. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, and this fourth beast represents the Roman Empire. Now, when you understand the scriptures and the prophecies of the scriptures, the Roman Empire, when they came into power, they would eventually fall, but then come back into power later. That's where we read in Revelation 13 that the deadly wound was healed. It says, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. So this is a representation of the ancient Roman Empire. All right. And America mirrors the ancient Roman Empire in every way. And this is why America is known as the revival, or the healing of the wound of that beast. It says, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn. This little horn that came from these is America, this little horn. And from this little horn, you see what has happened throughout the four corners of the earth, because through America, they have managed to push their agenda forward. That's why they were so adamant in setting up those central banks. They had 3. The first 2, when the charter was up after 20 years, it got shut down. But this time when they set up the central bank, they set it up in the appearance of a governmental agency, which is the Federal Reserve system. All right, that's nothing that more than a central bank, where they centralize all the money. All the money comes to them. They're the ones that divvy it up and do whatever they do there. All right, there is more to it, but that's just a brief little explanation. It says, before whom there were 3 of the first ones plucked up by the roots. And if you know history, when America was established, there were other European nations here that had their dibs on America, and America fought 3 wars, which was the Spanish-American War, the French-American War, and the Revolutionary War, I believe it was, which was Spain, France, and Great Britain. And through those 3, those are the 3 horns that were plucked up by the roots, because then America took control of everything that those other nations had at one time. Even though behind the scenes, England is still ruling America, but that's behind the scenes. It says, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. So this is the title of the lesson, America, the Voice of the NWO. All right, so this is that great mouth speaking great things, or that mouth speaking great things. Now, the speaking of great things is speaking against the Most High, blaspheming the Most High's name, which we're going to get, but it also goes into how this is why those other European nations hate this whore, because their look was more stout than their fellows, because, they are the mouthpiece of the New World Order. They are the ones that are setting forth and establishing what's the word I'm looking for? There's a word that's escaping me right now. Policy. They're the ones that's setting up and establishing policy in the world. And the New World Order has been established by the American legislation, America in general, the American military, so on and so forth, with the backing of the rest of the beast, NATO and the EU, that's carrying America, but they tired of carrying the hoe. No pun intended. So it goes on to read. That was it on that. So now let's jump from there to Revelation 13 and 1. It says, and I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea. Now this beast that John on the island of Patmos saw were all the different empires of Esau, beginning with the Greeks and ending with America, and he even saw the Russians up in there. Even though the Russians are not a part of the beast, the Russians are going to be one of the main opponents that destroy the beast, because the Most High set up Gog, which is Russia, as the destroyers of America, Babylon the Great. So it says having 7 heads and 10 horns. The 7 heads is a representation of their 7 major empires: the Greeks, the Romans, the French, the Spanish, Germania Major, Germania Minor, and Britain. Those are the 7 heads. But then when you read Revelation 17, it speaks about an 8th head, which is America. And then it says, and 10 horns, which are the European nations that came into something called the ECC back in 1958, or the European Economic, or EEC, Slovakia, European Economic Community. All right. So those are the 10 horns. And his horn, and upon his horns 10 crowns, which represented the 10 kingdoms, or the 10 kings. And upon his heads the name of blasphemy, because they're calling themselves the people of the Lord. They're calling themselves the saints. They're saying that the Most High is a so-called white man. They're saying that the Most High's son is a so-called white man. The angels are so-called white, so on and so forth. And they're saying that their kingdom is going to be established forever, which is the only kingdom that was promised to be established forever is Yahweh's kingdom / Israel's kingdom. It says, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. This represents the beginning of the beast. That's why I spoke about this. It's mentioned this one first. The leopard is a representation of Alexander the Greek and the Greek Empire, which was the beginning of these 7 heads. And his feet, which is the ending of the beast, were as the feet of a bear. And the bear is a representation of Russia. And Russia is going to be the one that brings them to their end. Along with other allies, but they're one of the main ones. And then when you read Ezekiel 38, it gives you all of the other allies of Russia that are going to help in this destruction. It says in his mouth, see, here we go with the word mouth again, and his mouth as a mouth of a lion. I'm sorry, this mouth of the mouth of a lion is a representation of England, because behind the scenes, England is really running things, because the Rothschilds are out there in England, and they're the top banking family on the planet that is pushing their policy of the New World Order upon the world. It says, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Yeah, because this Roman Empire, eventually was the one that's really where the power came from. And that's why America mirrors that great power. And when we read the 7th chapter of the 7th verse of the 7th chapter of Daniel, it spoke about that they had great power, that great iron teeth that stamped and devoured, pretty much all that opposed them, in so many words. It says, and I saw one of his heads as they were wounded to death. This was a Roman Empire that was wounded to death, and they pretty much fell for good roughly around 325 AD, to put a date on it. But when you go back to the actual emperors, the last Edomite emperor that ruled was Domitian, which was of the Flavian dynasty. After Domitian, all the other emperors after that were all Jakes. And there's different icons and different pictures of these emperors. It says, as they were wounded to death. So this head that was wounded, it seemed like it had a wound unto death, and his deadly wound was healed. So this deadly wound was not healed until 1,000-year period later, which came into an area or a time frame that was called the Renaissance era. It says, and all the world wondered after the beast. Why? Because when they got back into power, the first thing they did was deceive the whole world. You could read Revelation 20 for that. It says, and they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And that's why everyone is under the spell of America. Because America, the way it's set up and structured, is set up and structured just like the ancient Roman Empire. So pretty much when people are believing in the American system, they're really believing in the Roman system. And they worship the beast, saying, who was like unto the beast, who was able to make war with him. Yeah, because out of all these leagues that they made, you see what happened. They amassed a big, powerful military, beginning with America and all of her allies. They have a big, powerful military. The NATO. I'm sorry if I said the UN, Salakia. It's NATO, the EU and NATO. If I said the UN, Salakia, that was something else. So Salakia, if I said that earlier, the beast is NATO and the EU. If I didn't say that, so this big, massive army is what's being used, to push that power upon the world. Okay. So now it says, and there was given unto him a mouth. See, here we go with the mouth again, speaking great things. So these great things that they're speaking is what? This new world order. That's why you heard this devil Bush at the beginning speaking about the new world order, and how, and when it happens, and it will be successful, then it says, then will be realized the vision of the UN members. I'm not the UN members. Yeah, the UN founders, which people would look at it as being the member nations of NATO. But really what he's talking about is the actual founders, because that land that the UN is on was bought and donated by the Rockefellers, which are one of the top banking families. So it's really their vision. Because what really happened was that back in the early 1900s, you had something called the League of Nations, which was the United Nations of its day. And then before them, you had something else. I forgot what it was. It was in the 1800s. But this League of Nations, when it was established, it says the League of Nations, abbreviated as LON, was the first worldwide intergovernmental organization whose principal mission was to maintain world peace. It was founded on 10 January 1920, following the Paris Peace Conference that ended the First World War. In 1919, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson won the Nobel Peace Prize for his role as a leading architect of the League. I mean, you could read more of it. I just want to jump down to the main points of this. This is demise and legacy. It says, at the 1943 Tehran Conference, the Allied powers agreed to create a new body to replace the League. Why? Because they so-called failed, because there were people that were hip to the game. So it says the United Nations, many League bodies, such as the International Labor Organization, continued to function and eventually became affiliated with the UN. It says the designers of the structure of the United Nations intended to make it more effective than the League. The final meeting of the League of Nations took place on 18 April 1946 in Geneva. Delegates from 34 nations attended the assembly. This session concerned itself with liquidating the League. It translated assets worth approximately 22 million, if I'm not mistaken, U.S. in 1946, including the Palace of Nations and the League's activities, to the UN. So pretty much what they did was they stopped being the League and they became the UN. Just like you have a business that is prospering, but then when things start going bad and they go bankrupt, they don't really go bankrupt. All they do is dissolve that company and then build up another company with another name in the stead of that company. So that's pretty much what the UN is. It's just another label or another corporation that took the place of the League of Nations. It says returned reserve funds to the nations that has supplied and settled the debts of the League. Robert Cecil, addressing the financial session, said, It says, let us boldly state that aggression wherever it occurs and however it may be defended is an international crime. That is the duty of every peace-loving state to resent it and empty whatever force is necessary to crush it. That the machinery of the charter, no less than the machinery of the covenant, is sufficient for this purpose if properly used, and that every well-disposed citizen of every state should be ready to undergo any sacrifice in order to maintain peace. And when they shall say peace and safety, sudden destruction cometh upon them. I venture to impress upon my hearers that the great work of peace, is resting not only on the narrow interests of our own nations, but even more on those great principles of right and wrong, which nations, like individuals, depend. The League is dead. Long live the United Nations, because it was just transferred. Remember, prophecy had to be fulfilled. And this UN, United Nations, is pretty much their vision of the one world order. And this is what they're using for that. This is why Richie from Boston keeps bringing out that point. He sounds like a broken record, but that's how it is when you're making a point on certain things. You're going to maintain, the things that bring to light the message that you're bringing. And that's why he keeps harping on that song that them Japhetic people were singing, where they were introducing a new world order, by closing the borders and this, that, and the other. So this, and then it says that it was done by the United Nations, and that's why this devil said, at the end of his speech,
Credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
See, to fulfill the promise and visions of the UN founders. And he wasn't talking about the actual nations. He was talking about the people behind this United Nations. Which it says the United Nations is an intergovernmental organization that aims to maintain international peace and security, which is the same thing we read about the League of Nations. Develop friendly relations among nations, achieve international cooperation, and be a center for harmonizing the actions of nations. The UN was established after World War II with an aim of preventing future wars, succeeding the ineffective League of Nations. Okay? It says on April 25th, 1945. So in 1945, what happened a year prior to that? You had the Bretton Woods Agreement, or the Bretton Woods Conference, which was a financial conference to decide what was going to be the next currency or world currency, which was the dollar. And here in 1944, when the U.S. dollar was chosen as the world reserve currency at Bretton Woods, it was only the second currency in global reserve. And the reason why they transferred that to the U.S. dollar was because America was the catapult for the so-called New World Order. That's why we read in Revelation 13:5, and there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. And the blasphemies are against the Most High. And power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against the Most High, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell therein. Them that dwell in heaven. And that's why you see all those different Renaissance pictures, along with the message of the so-called New World Order. And it's in the back of a dollar bill. All you got to do is look in the back of a dollar bill, a Nunc Coeptis announcing the birth, and on the bottom of it, Novus Ordo Seclorum, New Order of the World, or New Order of the Ages, because they really believe that they're going to rule forever. But they're sadly mistaken. So going back to Daniel 7, what we'll do now is jump down to the 19th verse. And it says, Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake. See, it said eyes and what? And the mouth that spake very great things. And what are these very great things? The New World Order. You heard this devil introduce it. And this was a speech that was written from him. He didn't write this speech. This devil was not a wise devil. Talking about this devil right here.
We have
He's not wise. This is why when the time came for him to be put into a position, they said, should we give him, charge over the family business? He said, oh, no, Lord, no. We'll be in the breadline, before long. So what they did was they made him the head of the CIA, or one of them top members of the CIA, because they didn't want him having nothing to do with business, because they're stupid. They're not wise. They're not intelligent. Same as his son. His son was another dummy.
have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a
You see the looking at devil's eyes, and when we are successful, and we will be.
real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
So it says, in a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. Yeah, because when it comes to policy making, America, even though they all supposed to have equal say in NATO and the UN and whatever they have established, America has a final say. And that's why they established the Federal Reserve here as a central bank, to be able to control, and gave the power of the dollar to be the world reserve currency so that they can launch their new world order from here. And this is why they set up their stooges and puppets and all that in the government, and those that, were there that weren't in their best interest, they would pay them off, or they would give them sexual favors, in order to have them in pocket, to push forward the policy of this group. I beheld in the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. Yep, and we read about the same thing in Revelation 13. Until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. That's right. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth. And no other empire devoured the whole earth like America. Because even the ancient Roman Empire, they had the known world at the time. All them other empires had the known world at the time, but no one actually conquered the whole earth. So this is a future prophecy. Because even those so-called scholars that agree that the four kingdoms of Daniel were the Assyrian, Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, and the Roman Empire, they wouldn't be able to explain how this fourth beast had power over the whole earth. It says, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And you see it right now, and their policy is being pushed on the world. Their influence is being pushed on the world. And this is why when you look on the world, people don't mind going to certain places because it reminds them of America. The way it's set up with the tall buildings and the flashing lights, and the so-called skyscrapers and the restaurants and all, everything that mirrors America. And the song by the Guess Who, American Woman, that's about America. American woman, stay away from me. American woman, mama, let me be. Don't come around here no more. Don't want to see your face no more. Bright lights can hypnotize, sparkle someone else's eyes, because that's what America has been. It's been a golden city to the world, to hypnotize them into thinking that this is a place of wealth, a place of gain, a place of peace and harmony, and you can advance. But the only way you can really advance in this society is if you play by the rules of the international bankers, which eventually is going to turn to their so-called New World Order, to where they're going to be the main ones to benefit, but the Lord is going to crush their dreams. It says, and the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And this going back to what we read in the 8th verse, I believe it was, or the 7th verse, where it spoke about the that horn that devoured three of the other horns. And he shall speak great words against the Most High. Yeah, and that's what they're doing. They're speaking great words against the Most High and so-called establishing this new world order. You know? So you got to remember that terminology, new world order, is not written in the scriptures that way, but the idea of it is there. You go back to the Tower of Babel. That was what they had going on, a one world government, a one world order. When you go to the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, the same deal. All these different nations that ruled, they had one goal in mind, was to bring everyone under their rule. But no one is going to be able to accomplish that, because that's given to Yahushua. Now Esau is going to get close to it, because when the scripture said when he's about to fill his belly, the Lord shall, pour his fury upon him. But that honor belongs to Yahushua. So he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand unto the time and times and the dividing of times. Yeah, so they had a certain period of time to do this, where they wore out the saints of the Most High, which we see that. They change times and laws, which we see that all the time. And this is why when you try to keep our calendar and Esau's calendar, it always falls behind. Because Esau's calendar is 11 days longer than our calendar. So every year our calendar falls back 11 days. And every 3 years of Esau's calendar, our calendar falls back a month. That's why we have to keep adjusting, But in the kingdom of heaven, everything will be set back up properly, because all the foundations of the earth are out of course. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. Yeah, because this empire was set up so that the Lord, when he comes back, can take them down and destroy them. Like it says in Revelation 19, where it spoke about, he had many crowns. It's talking about the taking down of this society and of this kingdom, and his kingdom, Yahushua's kingdom, being established. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominion shall serve and obey him. And you can read about that too here when you read the 9th verse down. This also speaks about what we just read in the 27th verse, of all these crowns being taken down, and judgment being set, and Yahushua being brought before the Most High, and all nations bowing down to him, and his kingdom being established forever and never being destroyed. So America is the voice of the New World Order, but the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua will destroy them. So with that, I pray that you brothers have been edified. Till the next time I say Shalom. Oh, and one thing I want to say is, when your brothers get ready to break the fast, when the sun goes down in your area, make sure to drink water and eat some fruit first, before you actually break the fast. Don't just shovel food down your throat, because it's going to mess you up, because, your body has to get used to it again. So just drink some water, eat some fruit, let that, kind of get in your system, and then eat. I meant to say that yesterday, but it didn't come to mind. So with that, Shalom. Given into his hand unto the time and times and the dividing of times. Yeah, so they had a certain period of time to do this, where they wore out the saints of the Most High, which we see that. They changed times and laws, which we see that all the time. And this is why when you try to keep our calendar and Esau's calendar, it always falls behind. Because Esau's calendar is 11 days longer than our calendar. So every year